7 p.m. Could you do roll call, please?
Yes.
Chris Brown,
Here.
Rob Cruz,
Present.
Amy Grantham,
Here.
Nancy Hopper,
Present.
Katie Jess, John Prouty,
Here.
Melissa Smits.
Present. Could you all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before you, you have the minutes of the November 21st meeting. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown,
Aye.
Rob Cruz,
Aye.
Amy Grantham,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
John Prouty,
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye. Next, you have in front of you the agenda. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown,
Aye.
Rob Cruz,
Aye.
Amy Grantham,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
John Prouty,
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye. Next on the agenda, we have a special presentation. That would be the mill levy certification. Ms. Tony Miller.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to start with the worksheet, which Bev has up here, and I believe it's like the second one in the packet that you have. The top section here just lists out the bond amounts that are due in the next coming year. It breaks it out by principal and interest. Those amounts were verified with Piper Sandler, who I have people over there that work with me on the bonds, and they verified that I had the right schedule. So our total debt service for the coming year is $2,737,346.50. To that, we added estimated bond payment and fees of $6,500. So the total debt service that we're wanting to recover with the mill levy is $2,743,846.50, giving us a mill levy of 8.874. It is down a little bit from the previous year, which is always good news, because last year it was at 9.051. Next, we will move to the CDE certification form. This form is generated by CDE, which I learned this year as I was chasing people around the state trying to find who gives me the form. What we just want to verify is, if you look on number 8, the bond redemption fund mill is 8.874. That agrees with our worksheet. The rest of these numbers do come from CDE, and they pre-populate. And then this is the form I will take over to the assessor's office to be stamped and then send it on to CDE. So then the last page we have is the board approval certification form. And these amounts have been checked back and forth to the form to make sure they do agree. As you can see, the 8.874 is there with the total of 37.731. And then we'll get signatures on this, and that will also go with the CDE form over to the assessor's office. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Next is the opportunity for the audience. Anyone in the audience want to give us public comments? Okay. Next we have reports. First up is our Fort Morgan High School student representative, Corvea.
Okay. It has come to a realization that technology has been something that we all rely on throughout the district. With that being said, it was difficult for the teachers and staff to guide the students through our learning without our Chromebooks. However, on the bright side today, we got to use our Chromebooks even though the desktops were unavailable to us, which helped us get back to normal. Our normal now consists of upcoming events at the school. Tomorrow the 13th, our boys and girls basketball team will host Frederick for their 6-pack games. That same night, our band and orchestra will host their winter concert at 6 p.m. The following day, December 14th, our concert choir will be performing at 7:30. Then again, another round of basketball will take place Thursday night at Mountain View. And then finals week is coming up next week, the 19th through the 21st. And to help relieve some of the stress for the students, Student Senate is hosting a holiday movie night on the 16th for the student body. And then over break, there will be events taking place such as more basketball games and wrestling.
Thank you. Okay, next, I'd like to hear from the board. We attended the Colorado Association of School Boards Conference over a week ago, and I asked if each of the board members would present something about what we learned and what our takeaways were from that. And I'll go ahead and go first. One of the sessions I went to was on school safety, and we as a district are doing phenomenally well with all of that. Kudos to Vicki Davis. It did talk about a climate survey, which is something I kind of want to talk to you about, that they can come in and for free do a survey of what they think the climate is within the district, and I'm kind of wondering if that might be a good idea. The other thing that I did was to go to, I mean, definitely the general sessions are always wonderful to go to, but I went to a student strand where I sat down with 3 different students and another woman from Greeley, principal of the online school in Greeley. But the 3 students came from North Park, Thompson Valley, and the other one was from Boulder Valley. And one of the questions that we had to talk about was what are some of the pressing issues in your district? And having just gone to that safety meeting, I was expecting safety to be up there for each of those students, and not one of them said safety as an issue in their district, which I think was kind of nice to hear. They all did talk about funding. And I thought that was remarkable that we had a freshman, a junior, and a senior all talk about funding. So in line with what someone, an administrator, teacher, or parent, I don't remember, on one of the surveys had recommended that maybe we have a community-wide webinar, seminar, hopefully get someone in actually physically to talk about funding at the state level. That might be a really nice idea for the community to hear, as to how do we fund our schools. I think that would be great. So that was my takeaways. Rob?
Well, I attended a couple fairly interesting sessions. One was, I can't remember his name, I forgot my notes, on the diversity. He did diversity training at Denver for quite some time. He was also an associate professor at some universities doing diversity training. And he just spoke to the needs of, I mean, moving past the recognition of the need for diversity. I mean, not, that there's more than just the recognition of we're diverse, we need to embrace that. Yeah, that has to translate into some action plans. How do we do that? It's easy to give that concept lip service, but not that easy to develop action plans and stick to them in that relationship. So I found that interesting. Went to a session conducted either by Mancos School District or Mancos School District, depending on which one they see both pronunciations in the same room. So
Same thing.
I'm not sure which district I was at, but I always thought it was Mancos. But anyway. And they have just built a new campus with BEST funds, but they had experienced in the last 24 months like 2 or 3 student suicides in their school district. And they were bringing in a lot of outside agencies to help the community on a variety of different levels, but they didn't have facilities for those to come in. And so they talked mainly about multi-purposing their school district, where outside of school districts, the school district basically transformed into nonprofit offices and headquarters and things like that outside of school. So it was quite a big thing about repurposing their school district buildings and overcoming, that's my classroom, that's my building, that's my gym, that's my, and outside of school hours, it wasn't, somebody else's at that point. So that was also very interesting. So it was a good session
For sure.
at Mancos.
Yeah. John?
So one of the sessions that I attended was on culturally responsive leadership. And I found it to be very informative and interesting from the standpoint of not just looking about leadership, but how do you mold that and look at the cultures and the diversity that you're dealing with, and how do you reach those people, and really, how do you set up a congruency between the school district and the community that you're trying to talk with. And part of that is just being culturally responsible, but also understanding those cultures. What we consider as a norm may not be what their norms are, and vice versa. So really, recognizing, develop those communication lines and those teams to really develop that cohesion between the school districts and the communities, recognizing the communities that they're serving, because we serve a very diverse population here, but it's interesting that almost every school district around the state has diversity in it. It's just different, and everybody looks different, and recognizing what is it that you're actually doing to really respond to that. And then I also attended one of the school safety ones as well, and just to kind of caveat and add in on what you had was really looking at, one of the things was looking at it from a student-led perspective about safety and what their perceptions are about safety within their own schools. Because I think so many times, and it just resonated with me because so many times we really look at what do we see as safety, what is it they need, and we're looking at the nuts and bolts, whereas they're looking at it through a more of a holistic approach, because it's really about them, keeping those students safe, and what is it that they view that is safe and unsafe, because those perspectives are different from our points of view as well, and finding that common ground between the two.
Thank you. Nancy?
Went to the business meeting, which is always a part of CASB Winter Conference, and we had a carryover from Delegate Assembly on some resolutions, and so 29, 30, and 31. So that was interesting. I think we got all of those kind of issues ironed out and resolved, and forming some committees to begin working and looking at CASB bylaws and how we can improve CASB as an advocacy group for school boards. Also went to some security things. It's really funny how all that kind of played out.
Mhm.
But and then the last speaker that we had, general speaker, was a gentleman by the name of David Horsager. Oh my gosh, he was an excellent speaker,
Yes.
just phenomenal. Probably the best speaker I've ever had listened to, and it's too bad he was at the end.
Yeah.
But his book that Cassie purchased for all the attendees was Trusted Leader, and it's the 8 pillars that drive results and being a trusted leader. And so the areas were clarity, compassion, character, competency, commitment, connection, contribution, and consistency. And his research on all of those, and then he's got a chapter on each of those areas, and that once trust is easily broken, can easily be broken, and how hard that is to build. But when someone truly trusts in a leader, you can find everything that'll fit under some of those categories somewhere. So an excellent book, an excellent presentation. It was so engaging, and using some of his, when he was growing up and wanting to emulate his father and how strong his father was with his morals and his beliefs, and gave some real examples. It was just a phenomenal presentation.
Well, what he says, we have like 100 more ways to build trust every day.
Yeah.
Like every day. you
Every
have
day.
At least that many
Yeah,
things to build trust.
so very good.
Sorry, Chris, I'm not even gonna ask you.
Longmire was good.
Amy?
Okay, I had 3 areas that really kind of stuck out to me. So in the general session on day 2, there was a speaker who was talking about stories and all of the stories that come out of school districts. And I remember this same kind of message from one of the speakers last year as well, who was talking about their story, how they got to where they were today, and how basically they themselves, family members, and they had seen other students break the cycle of poverty through education. So that was really encouraging for me, based on some of the recent decisions that we've made as a board in an effort to make Morgan County School District an even better place to work and be educated. I'm hoping that 10, 15, 20 years from now, we see some of those stories. So that was one of my really big takeaways that I was very encouraged by. I attended the Rural Alliance breakfast, and they talked about some of the legislature that's going on and how us out here are represented. And it's a little lopsided just due to our population, but that was pretty enlightening and good to see. So then the third thing that is also one of my hopefully goals as a board member is teacher housing. So we went on to a session from Eagle County, and you would think that being up there they would be sufficiently funded for teacher housing. However, they are not. They were able to utilize some of their property that they had to go ahead and get some funding. I don't remember exactly how they got it financed, but they worked it out. They worked with real estate attorneys and several finance experts to get it financed, and they are putting up housing developments, apartments, over, I think it was like 3 or 4 different school districts. So housing a whole bunch of teachers up there because there is no such thing as affordable housing in Aspen. So that was awesome. Wrote down a lot of really good ideas. So hoping to pursue that in the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you. Do we have Katie? Katie?
I do not believe so. No.
We'll allow her to say something later. So next we have the Centennial BOCES meeting report. Chris?
Well, I've got in there the reports from Mark and from, what's that gal's name, Maria?
Al Castillo.
And and I don't have a whole lot to add beyond those. Meeting was standard, I just don't have anything to add. We were gonna have a report from CHASA on transgender in athletics, but that didn't happen, so that'll be upcoming. And that's all I've got for that.
Thank you, Chris, and we did miss you at the conference.
I miss going, I did. COVID stinks.
Okay, moving on, superintendent report, Mr. Sanders.
Okay, I just wanted to update you a little bit where we're at on the 4-day week discussion so far. We had met shortly after the board had voted, and I got together with a small group, my cabinet, and it includes myself and Dr. Frasco, Dr. Childress, who else? Jalen, Shelley, and myself. And we sat down and we just kind of brainstormed titles or main subject. You can see them around the room. Things that we might need to address, things that might come up in the process. And then in the blue, those are the main headings. And then in the pink are things that we thought of just as a initial swipe. So I think there's 13 posters, or there's one more that's PD, and I don't know where that got to, but, did it get put on the wall?
No.
Okay.
It's still on the chart paper.
Yeah, it's on the chart paper, but that came up through the conversation that we needed to add that one as well. So from that, we then took it to the principals meeting, and we said, okay, here's our initial swipe at it. Why don't you see if there's any other main categories you want? What other things can you put up here that we might be missing? And so the things in green are things that were suggested from the principals. And then on each one of those subjects, they went around and kind of did a round robin on 3 cards at one time, 5 minutes each, and they wrote down different ideas. And then on Thursday night, we had the DAC meeting, and those are in the pink. We did those with that group. Our plan is now to take this to the various buildings around the district and have every building do something similar to this, where they actually put their ideas in, because my thing is I want to be inclusive of how we put this together, at least gather input. we need to put together a calendar committee right quick to get a calendar to you guys, and then we need to figure out who's going to be on the committee, those kinds of things. Because what we're going to do when we gather all this information is we're going to take it back to this committee, and then we're going to try and figure out the answers to some of these questions or how to address those before we actually bring into the board for any kind of formal action or anything on a plan forward. And part of the committee, I would like to ask a couple board members to be a part of that committee when it comes time, and we just haven't got that far yet because right in the middle of it, I got pulled out for a very different issue. And so we're going to start, hopefully get that issue cleared up, and we'll be back on the road with 4-day week again. So any questions on the process or so far? Again, we're just in the process of gathering input right now to see where we're at. So that's my report, unless you have any questions.
Looks like a good start.
A lot of things to think about there.
Quite. All right, moving along to Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Assessment, Dr. Frasco.
So a really quick update on Gifted and Talented. As you know, we do have a part-time person filling in as coordinator. We did meet with, we being Shelley O'Connor, myself, Cindy Bruntz, who is in the GT role right now, and Melanie Eisenhower, who is our Northeast GT contact, known her for a long time. She came out to talk to us about kind of what to expect going into this monitoring. We will be monitored for our GT program next year from CDE, and we want to try to make sure we're actually really ready for that. But in addition to that, we really just talked through our current kind of job description for the coordinator and kind of what CDE kind of recommends going through that process. She's touched base with the people at CDE who are in charge of several of the grant codes that we have for Gifted and Talented, and one of them being that we were under the we are only supposed to be spending certain grant funds for qualified GT personnel, and the state is giving us some grace on that this year, so we can actually spend those monies to pay Cindy for filling in this position. And then as I updated cabinet, we're hoping to revise the job description. It's obviously still posted in hopes that we get a full-time coordinator back on the ground for next year. But there's just a lot of work to be done between now and hopefully that the state will grant us a little grace too and not do our monitoring in the fall. I hope they wait till the spring of 2024 so we have a coordinator in the position and some more things that kind of need to be maybe refined in the district on as far as who's in charge of like writing advanced learning plans, for example. So we're trying to get that back closer to the classroom level. And then we're also going to apply, Cindy's been putting together an additional opportunity came forward about some potential grant dollars to support kind of work in the buildings, and so we're working on that. So any questions that I maybe can answer about Gifted and Talented?
Do they monitor you on a cycle, or is
They do.
Okay.
We have a 5-year comprehensive program plan that's posted, I guess, to CDE. I actually just looked ours up. And then, so they send in someone from a monitoring team to help us out, and it sounds like it's going to be a good process. And so, like, out of any monitoring comes like, hey, these are really strengths of yours, and these are things that we really want you to consider. As far as science curriculum adoption, I've just met twice with elementary and secondary folks. We're going to meet again in January. I think the verdict's out on, whether or not we want to be looking at certain textbook companies. There's some, like, the biggest thing that I think has come forward for secondary is we are offering an astronomy class, Earth and Space Science. We actually don't have a textbook or anything that kind of goes along with it. So there's just kind of like offshoots of figuring out what kind of things we really do need. But keeping the wonder in science is going to be really important. And so that's kind of the new next generation science standards is really thinking about phenomena and not really killing the wonder of science for kids. And so it's been pretty cool to watch. Some of our science teachers have really taken Paul Anderson's Wonder of Science, a lot of planning going into it. I've been observing some science classrooms. It's just a different way of presenting science without just giving a textbook and saying this is why hailstorms, for example, happen the way they do. Instead, it's letting kids really explore the wonder and then getting back to the actual concept. So it's been a good process so far. The other thing that I totally failed to notice, and actually one of my instructional coaches pointed out, is that foreign language is also up for adoption this year, as is PE. I think as far as foreign language goes, that will tie really back, I think, into dual immersion and really thinking through that. So there's probably some work to be done starting right away in January to kind of get that looked at. We did actually launch advanced placement for Spanish this year at the high school, in hoping that we're bridging back from high school back down to elementary for that. And then PE, a lot of times it's not so much textbooks because it's different than health. And so I'll be reaching out to the PE teachers, although I do know we spend a significant amount of our wellness grant money on flexible seating and things that would help in the wellness realm in schools. So didn't go unnoticed, but Haley Sills, thanks to her, she emailed and said, hey, what about foreign language and PE? Science is always a bigger one to me, right? So some of those other ones kind of, is fiscally at least, science is always a math. Those contents are always a little bit more spendy. And then finally, I know we sent an email out, but as you know, we put in a launch for the state board to request to reconsider for our school performance framework at Columbine and also our district performance framework. We were missing being an improvement by just a few little parts of a percentage. That was a really it was a lot of work. And Simone really led the charge for Columbine, so kudos to her because I kind of followed suit. She actually did all of the hard work in figuring out how to pull the data, and then I could just call in on her on saying, hey, I know where you pulled this number for Columbine, how do I do it for the district? But we were, I think it went to the state board today.
This week.
So we unless something happens, we've been approved to move into the improvement category, which is huge. So we're not on the clock, so to say.
When is social studies up? It's a cycle. Is it fairly soon, or done it relatively soon?
I think we just did it.
Social studies isn't up for a little bit yet.
Okay.
I will,
We
yeah,
just
yep,
did it.
yep.
I only ask because of the conversations in the state.
Yeah, yeah.
Just curious.
Any questions? Other questions for me?
Great. Thank you. Yeah. All right, next we have our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Miller.
I just had a couple things. One thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about the mill levy, that is due on the 15th of December. My hope is to get it filed tomorrow if I can get across town in the snow, but we have a little extra time there. And then I also have to upload it to CDE by that same date. So that will get taken care of one way or another. So the other thing is I had hoped tonight we would be presenting the audit, but I felt like we were just pushing too hard to hit that deadline, and I like a little time to just digest it and certainly have you guys have a number of days to look at it before the meeting. So we're hoping to have it issued this week, which we would like to have a special meeting next week at 5:30. The only date that Amanda cannot meet is on Wednesday. So the only thing we'll do in that meeting is she'll do a Zoom presentation of the audit. I'll probably do a couple talking points to the audit, and then if you have questions, we'll go with that.
Can it be a virtual?
It is virtual, yeah.
Can everyone be virtual if they?
If they want to be, that's fine too.
I don't know if.
But I don't know how.
It depends on the day for me.
I don't know if they passed a law that you could go virtual, but I'm not sure.
That might have been just for a special
Yeah.
period of time. That might not
I'd have to look at
apply.
that, but we need to have a special meeting, it looks like.
Yeah, and I don't expect it to be really lengthy. Amanda's pretty good about just hitting the high points, and I promise not to drone on and on with my comments.
How can you be a CFO and not?
I missed that line.
I knew it was coming.
That's okay. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Next, we have Human Resources Director, Dr. Childress.
Thank you. It's FSA season. We have alphabet soup for quite a bit of what we do in education, and flexible spending accounts are right up in there. So we've been in buildings this last week and this week, helping teachers and our classified staff with flexible spending accounts, and whether they decide to waive them or put some money in those, we're helping them figure those things out. So 'tis the season. And we've also started our plan for negotiations. I met with the lead negotiator, and we decided that right after break, we'd get together and just sort of parse out what we're seeing as big topics that our negotiations team is going to have to tackle. So not hitting anything solid just yet, but getting organized. So we'll be getting organized as soon as we get back from break, and then we'll have some solid dates to put on the calendar and rally around. But we met with them and starting to wrap our heads around what needs to change in the agreement based on the 4-day week. So there you go.
Thank you. Next up, we have discussion items. A is update on RFQ bids for the qualified energy service or design build contractor partner selection.
So we actually got 2 bids on this. It's a bid for a turnkey job. One was from McKinstry and one was from Millig Design. We met as a committee last Wednesday, and then John came in on Thursday, I believe it was, and looked at those bids, and we created a score sheet. And both, I can let John comment on what he saw, but I felt like there was definitely one that rose to the top, and it was pretty unanimous by the committee as far as who we'd recommend moving forward. So do you have anything you want to comment on that, John?
You know, so the process was coming in, look at both bids side by side, and really scoring out each section between the first 2 sections were worth 2 points, and then the next 2 were worth 3 points, I believe that's what it was, and scoring them out. And really, in scoring them out, just reading it, Rob's right. One of the proposals really, just clearly was much more conducive to what we were looking at doing, and really in line with the district needs, I think, as well.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this was for the turnkey job on the HVAC project. We are not open for bid on the other project quite yet. So this one is just about the HVAC piece. And we have put together a recommendation for the board tonight to accept Millig as our design build moving forward for that. To write the best grant, to help us to design the system, and then at that point, we'd put it out for bid again to do the actual contracting work. So that's where that's at.
Okay. Thank you. Discussion item B is girls wrestling as a sport at FMMS. Can't wait to hear from Mr. Christensen.
His boss is putting him on the spot.
Good evening, Eric Christensen, Fort Morgan Middle School, AP Athletic Director. So what I am talking to you guys tonight about is a tentative kind of proposal for an additional stipend for a wrestling coach. And here's where I'm coming from. We have 2 coaches currently, and right now I have 57 kids signed up for wrestling. Now, it's easy to sign up, and it's one thing to sign up and another thing to show up. But 8th grade football, we had 50 kids sign up and we had 55 come out. So that usually doesn't happen, that we have more. I have 57 kids signed up, 13 of those are young ladies, which we haven't had as many in the past. Last year we had one young lady out. And so the high school's program has probably made this happen a little sooner than we thought. Now, in my mind, if we have 35 kids out or less, my 2 coaches can probably handle it. But if our numbers stay, or those amount of kids come out, the need for another coach, safety-wise, supervision-wise, I believe is needed. So I come before you guys to see what you guys think about that and if that's a possibility. Now, if I have less than 35, I don't need that. But if we do, the season starts January 3rd, and I'd rather be a little proactive, knowing that if I have the blessing, that I can go out right away and try to get that filled with a person. Preferably, if I have 13 ladies, I would love to have a female coach, but I don't know who that person is, I guess. And those are kind of my areas right now. We have 24 8th graders signed up, 15 7th graders, and 18 6th graders, and those 2 coaches. Questions that you guys might have for me about that?
Do you know, is the middle school going to have a girls' division?
They're not.
They're not.
So, yeah, so what I did is I did some research for our meets that we do on the Front Range, I would say. So our bigger ones that we go to Thompson Valley or Greeley or Windsor. And I reached out to those athletic directors, and they haven't seen an increase in their numbers of young ladies. So when I asked them, they're still going to do wrestle boys versus girls. There's not going to be any difference when we run those meets. Windsor was the only AD that got back to me that would like to eventually, where we could get to the point where girls wrestle girls, but they're not there yet. We seem to have a larger number. Now, talking to Kyle Gralis, who's the high school coach, he said, and I'd heard this previously, that Yuma High School has 16 girls out and 14 boys out. So they actually have more girls. And we probably will be getting there at some point, I guess, in the near future, going forward, that maybe some of these matches, meets that we go to will have girls versus girls. Right now, some of the schools that we go to, say Yuma Middle School and stuff, they don't have or weren't getting enough wrestlers out to even have a full team per se. So where we have 50 and they have 10. So when we have our meet in February, we'll hold a bash so I can get all 50 of those kids can get 1, 2, 3 matches. Well, Yuma just wants to have a duel because it's small and easier for them to do, but then I can only bring 10 of my 50 kids, and it's not as neat for them, I guess, or as fun, because half of them get to stay home. So right now, no.
Okay.
I see it coming. I do see that movement.
It's on the horizon.
And then we have to be aware of like Title IX and stuff like that, because we'll be on that again.
Do we have equipment for that kind of number if we get that many people coming out?
Yeah, so we just bought uniforms last year. They were up for the cycle. So when we bought uniforms, we looked, and talking with Tony Hokenall, the head coach, what we wanted to do, do we buy 10 girls' uniforms and we only have 1 out? Do we buy 1 and then 10 come out? So we bought a uniform where we have the kids, or the kids have the option, or actually we buy them undershirts to go underneath of all the singlets, the uniforms, so that they be conducive for both the boys and the girls. And so that's how we kind of got away with that, or that makes it work for us.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate you trying to get a female coach, but as someone whose daughter was starting offensive line for the 8th grade football team at the middle school, I know that they're professional as coaches, so I know that can happen without having to have a female coach.
Right, and I think we'd be all right. It would be nicer for some of those other ones. I just don't know in my head, thinking through who's out there that would be willing to step forward and provide their time and coach those girls. I just don't know that person. I'm sure they're out there.
Supervision is a big piece for us. I want to go these in locker rooms and those types of things, just making sure that our kids are safe and making great choices in all aspects of it, so.
And this will be the first year I have 2 mats that I always bring down, and we use the small gym for that. And then on the weekends, we roll those up so they can play basketball. And then Monday morning, the wrestlers, and we tape that back down again. And I'll have to bring another mat from a storage and piece that around, because if these numbers hold true, I'll need more mat space. And so it'll be wall-to-wall wrestling mats in there. It's all right.
It's a good problem to have.
It is, and talking to Kyle, he was excited because obviously, even if these 24 eighth graders, 12 of them wrestle, you know, and in high school, basketball and wrestling, you know, we lose some of them, but, you know, if half of those kids wrestle, I mean, that's a large number, so, and that's a good problem, and then his numbers go up, so.
Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Christensen.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along, we have action item A, which is to approve the RFQ bid, going with the committee's recommendation of Millick Design Build. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown,
Aye.
Rob Cruz,
Aye.
Amy Grantham,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye. Action item B is to approve girls wrestling as a sport at Fort Morgan Middle School. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown,
Aye.
Rob Cruz,
Aye.
Amy Grantham,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye. Next, we're voting on this. Schedule special meeting for audit presentation.
We have to approve the meeting, and we have to determine when we're going to have the meeting.
Okay, all right. Can we vote on it without knowing when? Or do we need to establish
We
the
just have
when
to-
first?
We just have to do the as long as we do 24-hour notice, we're fine.
Okay, all right. So, what is the pleasure of the board on scheduling the special meeting?
I move to approve a schedule be set for a special meeting for the audit presentation.
Well, I enthusiastically second that.
We have a motion and an extremely enthusiastic second.
Fierce.
Any discussion? Fierce.
Yeah, fierce.
So will you reach out to him to schedule?
Fierce.
Oh,
I'll take care of it.
Rob's
I'll take care of it.
Roll call, please.
Chris Brown,
Aye.
Rob Cruz,
Aye.
Amy Grantham,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye.
So I'll reach out and see if we can get the date.
As long as I can pick my daughter up at the airport, I'm good. Action item D, mill levy certification. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Brown,
Aye.
Rob Cruz,
Aye.
Amy Grantham,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye. Next up, we have in front of you newsletters from Sherman, Baker, Green Acres, and Pioneer. Advanced planning, winter break for students begins December 22nd and ends January 10th. District Support Center will be closed December 23rd, 26th, 30th of 2022, and January 1st, 2023. January 9th is a professional development day. January 10th is a clerical day. Students return to class on Wednesday, January 11th, 2023. And the next board meeting, as far as the next regular board meeting, is January 16th, 2023. And potentially, we've got something else tomorrow, but we don't know yet.
Oh,
As far as, yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, okay.
Oh.
I'm like, well, yeah.
At any rate, if there's nothing else to come before the board, we are adjourned. Did I put you on the spot?
Oh, no, I was thinking.